Hey, what's up everybody, this is Muse24, and today I'm taking a look at the fourth Guardians of the Galaxy volume of the current run by Brian Michael Bendis. This is the original Sin tie-in, and as you can see here by the cover art, we finally get some answers as to what happened to Richard Rider in the Cancerverse. This is something that's, about 5 years in the making, something like that, because Thanos Imperative came out, I think, 2010, so that'd place it, right about there, with regards to how long it's been since Richard Rider kick the bucket. And that's the thing, is that we always knew that he didn't make it back from the Cancerverse, but we didn't know what happened to him. And here we get something of an answer as to what happened to him. They don't exactly show his moment of death, but it's pretty heavily implied that even if he survived, there's no way he's getting out of the Cancerverse. Taking a look here at the front cover, like I said, pretty simple art there of Thanos and Richard Rider. I do like these hardcover binds a lot, though. I'm really glad that Marvel's pushing those as much as they are. And on the back, we have the Guardians kind of trapped in this little bubble, struggling for space, if you will. This collects issues 18 through 23. And as I mentioned, the beginning here is Gamora asking Star-Lord what happened to Richard Rider. Because for those who read any of the Cosmic Renaissance stuff, the Annihilation War, Thanos Imperative, the Guardians of the Galaxy run from like 2008, Richard Rider and Gamora were romantically involved for quite a good portion of that. And so, even though I think she's gotten over him to a certain degree, she still wants closure. Why exactly she wanted to know now, I'm not exactly sure. Why she didn't, have this come up so as such a powerful thing beforehand, I'm not entirely positive, but there is some really cool artwork in this. I got to tie into the Guardians 3000 stuff here, as well as a little bit of throwback to the 2008 Guardians run. And then we have Star-Lord with Richard Rider there, and some of the Cancerverse tentacles kind of whipping up in the background there. The one thing that's kind of odd about this is the way they depict Gamora, because she's been a lot more calm and collected in the more recent Guardian stuff, and for her to kind of go back to this, it's almost like a torture sequence that she puts Star-Lord through, in that she's interrogating him and she's being kind of brutal about it. Not that she's like physically hurting him or anything, but she has him tied up to a chair, and she's kind of really intense with the way she words stuff. And Star-Lord is trying to be like, hey, be reasonable about this. If you want an answer, you got to sit through this whole thing, and you're not going to like the way it turns out. But he also explains that later on that there was a reason that he was never going to tell her, but he was never supposed to, and that's because Richard Rider told him, don't tell her. Don't tell her what I did here, what we did here. It is kind of cool, though, to see Drax join in the Cancerverse fight, because in the Annihilation stuff, Thanos Imperative specifically, for those who haven't read it, it was believed that he died at one point during the Thanos Imperative, but in fact he must have slipped. It must have been when they were actually inside the Cancerverse, if I'm thinking back to it correctly. I think it was, so he just reformed at some point later, because the whole rule with the Cancerverse is that nothing dies there. It just sort of reforms and is cursed to an eternal suffering, basically. Which may be part of the reason that everything is so backwards there, why Captain Marvel and the Revengers are these dark versions of the heroes from Earth. But we do see the Cosmic Cube come back into play there. And the tone of this, I definitely felt, was more in line with the Thanos Imperative and Annihilation and all that stuff. More so than most of the previous Guardian stuff. It's a nice little break to go back to that sort of style of storytelling, and even that art style to a certain degree. And I won't show everything that happens there with the fight against Thanos and the Cancerverse inhabitants. But after we wrap all that up and we get something of a conclusion that didn't quite end the way I thought it was going to, that little special arc with the Cancerverse, but I think it ended in a satisfying enough manner. It's one of those things where I actually never thought they were going to go ahead and explain what happened to Richard Rider, but now that they have, I think it worked well enough. The second half of this, we follow up what the third volume covered, which was Flash Thompson joining the Guardians of the Galaxy, Flash Thompson joining the Guardians, going to space. We also have a little bit of a follow-up on the X-Men crossover, with Star-Lord talking to Kitty Pryde, and this, I assume, bleeds over a bit into the Legendary Star-Lord stuff, which I haven't read yet. It's kind of nice to see them have a moment and see where their relationship is going and how it's developing and all that. And of course we have a very stark transition there between Star-Lord and Kitty Pryde having a nice moment alone, and then there's Drax just beating the crap out of some alien because he can. But getting back to Flash Thompson and Venom, the symbiote is not reacting well outside of its home environment, or its adopted home environment rather, which was on Earth. And I really like this sort of weird Mothman design there that they have for it. There's some really cool takes that they've been doing with Venom ever since they gave it to Flash Thompson. I was really keen on the SWAT team sort of Black Ops look that it had in the Venom storyline, which was written by Rick Remender, and I have done reviews of all that. If you want to go check it out on my channel, I highly recommend it, as the series is just really well written. But I really like that design of him, and of course, once the symbiote gets loose, we have some fun stuff like Venom Groot, and a couple of the other characters do get the Venom symbiote as well, which I won't spoil that because I think those are really cool. But we have a little bit of a setup for, I think, what's going to be a future plot point. They kind of end on this note as well, which is that with King Jason being ousted from the Spartax Empire, basically the council there has decided that Star-Lord should be in charge, and Carol Danvers happens to come across a sign that says that, and she's like, I don't understand what's going on. When did Star-Lord sign up for that? And the simple truth is that he didn't. He did not sign up for becoming the leader of the Spartax Empire. They just decided he should be. So then we get to go to the planet of the symbiotes, because that's how we're going to fix the whole problem of the Venom symbiote acting up and not responding well to being away from Earth, and Flash being so confused in this strange world that he's in. And we get this really cool look at a bunch of different symbiotes. Some of these, I believe, are from different stories. Like there's a T-Rex there from Old Man Logan, and this one looks familiar down here, but I couldn't tell you what it's from. I think Hybrid's one of these in the background here. But then some of them I think are just made up for the sake of the comic page looking cooler. It's a nice little splash page there of all the different symbiotes. And they kind of go into the history of the symbiotes and explain how they are supposed to be sort of this proud warrior species to a certain degree, but they can't live without a host, obviously. So some of them end up partnering with great partners that show a lot of potential and are strong-willed, and some of them pair up with not-so-great people like Cletus Cassidy. And the symbiotes sort of recognize Flash as being one who is worthy of being host to a symbiote as renowned as Venom is, at least within the Marvel Comics scene, or the Marvel Heroes scene, as it were. So I think that the direction they take with the Planet of the Symbiotes here is interesting. I think it's simple enough that it's not going to get too deeply rooted in, I guess, complicated matters there. I don't think we need to go back to the Planet of the Symbiotes anytime real soon. I think this handled it just fine. The way that they kind of cap things off with Flash Thompson and the Venom symbiote, I think works well for anything they want to do in the future, whether it's him going back to Earth and taking on his sort of Avengers role again, or being, sort of a lone gun, a lone wolf, or if they want to keep him in space here with the Guardians. I think that would be a lot of fun too. A lot of potential there as well, especially with like new forms the suit could take on. But I think that the sort of presentation they take of the symbiote planet is cool. It's weird. It's very much alien, which I think is fitting. It's different than what they did back in the 80s or 90s, whenever that was, that Eddie Brock and Peter Parker went to the planet of the symbiotes. So it's a completely different take on the planet and the symbiotes as a species, and I think that's kind of needed in this current generation of comics. They could have done without visiting the planet at all, but I think it works as a nice little subplot here, following up on the whole Thanos imperative bookend there, the whole dealing with Richard Rider's death. And compared to, I think, the last couple volumes, this has been more single-minded in its focus, or rather, it's got two storylines, but it focuses on them pretty well and carries across multiple issues there. I think the Thanos imperative stuff is like 4 of the issues contained in this. So that's a good chunk of what you're getting here. And I definitely appreciate that, because I thought they were maybe just going to do a 1 or 2 issue feature on Richard Rider. But I am hopeful that with future issues they go into, or future volumes rather, they go into some weird new territory. They did a little bit of that early on with, Angela joining the team and all that, and I appreciate them covering this stuff as they did in this one volume. Like, I'd rather just they do it all right now, cover Richard Rider, cover what happened to Flash Thompson, wrap that all up, and then we can go ahead and go into weird new territory, which I think is what we're going to get a little bit of. I think we're going to have the whole politics of Spartax and Quill getting wrapped up in that, and I think Captain Marvel's going to join back in and help the team a little bit here. But I'd like to see them go even further into just, there's a big galaxy out there, and there's lots of crazy stuff we can do, as the cosmic renaissance of the mid-2000s showed. So that's pretty much it for this review, and with that, I will see you guys next time.